Good evening, everyone. I will call this regular city council meeting to order. I don't have any open forum tickets, so at this time I'd ask you all to stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance with me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This time I would ask for a motion approving the minutes of the regular city council meeting of May 8th, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. We have some presentations this evening. First is the Three Rivers Park District update by Chair and District 4 Representative John Gunyo. Good evening, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Nice to see you again.
It's great to be back, and we really, with my colleague John Gibbs, who represents the southeast quadrant, I think, of the city, and I have the other 3/4 of Richfield. And we wanted to especially thank you for putting us ahead of the CAFR discussion, because as someone who's done a lot of those in his career, even I think those can be, well, but appreciate the chance to be here. In the interest of time, I thought I'd go through things, and then John and I could answer any questions you might have. We wanted to talk a little bit about kind of what we've been doing in the Richfield area as well as district-wide. I'd like to remind people that our mission is a little different than parks and recreation departments, and that we emphasize more education, natural resources, things like that. And we're also bigger. We have the big parks and the big trails. In fact, we have about 27,000 acres, which is roughly the size of Bloomington in the western and southern part of the metro area. We're the major provider of the regional trails, and we have about 11 million visitors every year, which is more than all the state parks combined. So we have a fairly large operation. Most of suburban Hennepin County, and then the adjoining counties, we have some pretty significant operations. Wanted to mention environmental stewardship because it's something that most people don't even know we do. We have a long-standing policy that's our 80-20 policy, which means that of our holdings, each one, no more than 20% can ever be actively used. So, and that means not just development things, but actively used for recreation, any other kind of things. So the rest, 80%, is preserved in perpetuity. We have a lot of different programs. Just a couple highlights. We do a lot with water quality. In fact, Bryant Lake, that's not too far, is no longer considered impaired as a result of our efforts to clean up some of those lakes. We've planted about 2 million trees over the years. It's a little easier because we have our own tree farm. We grow them. And it's interesting to talk to the folks there that we are now planting seedlings in the tree farm that we expect the climate, respective to the climate that they will be involved in 20 years from now. So with the climate changes, we're taking that into account. I certainly don't know enough about which zones and all that, but we're always, well, we are, our staffs are always thinking ahead to make sure that we're planning accordingly. Number of education programs, our nature centers, and all those things. We're probably most known for our parks and reserves. A couple of the highlights. You're probably aware that we've done some major things at Highland. In fact, John is really instrumental in that. He represents part of Richfield, Bloomington, and Eden Prairie, and so he really took the lead from the board on the new chalet. And I hope you've had a chance to go out and see that. Unfortunately, my 5 children all went through the old chalet, and I tripped over more boot bags than I can hope to account for there. But it's the new facility is really popular. Also for summer use, we're doing a lot of things in the summer now that we didn't used to do. Then, kind of on the back side of the mountain, we have a 5K cross-country ski trails that we put in that are a 5K loop. There's very few of those facilities in the country. We have lighted, and I'm told I have to say dependable snow. We don't say artificial snow, it's dependable snow. In fact, it's so dependable between us and Theodore Wirth, who really pretty much saved high school cross-country sports because we obviously don't have the snowfalls consistently from year to year anymore. We have ski jumping. We have a number of signature races in the area that you name it, and there's if a bike can get out there, whether it's in the mud or different things, so we have sponsored races now that we're doing. One thing I wanted to mention, as it's particularly exciting to us, is that we own Coon Rapids Dam. And I'm not sure why we own Coon Rapids Dam, but years ago someone gave it to us and we took it. And we decided, after the Corps of Engineers replaced the gates and fixed all that up, we decided to try to do something significant with that area because it is on the Mississippi, which is the premier river of our entire country and one of the great rivers of the world. So we entered into a partnership with Brooklyn Park that owns quite a bit of land in that area, and we're now in the process of finalizing that regional park plan, and we'll then put together the whole development strategy for that. And we really see it, in the new name for it is Mississippi Gateway, so we really see it as a gateway to access then the unique environmental area that is the Mississippi. And we're also we already started using it, but we'll expand that use for our outreach efforts. So we've stepped up our outreach into communities that haven't traditionally had access to all of our great facilities, and this will be the hub in which we'll offer that throughout the district. We do a number of park partnerships. I mentioned that we're doing a lot more outreach than we have in the past because not everybody lives as close as some others to many of our facilities. Everything from Sahaki Park, that's just north of Theodore Wirth, that we have a three-way partnership with Robbinsdale and Golden Valley. We're developing some trails. We'll have an education center that'll go in there. Closer to home, Taft Park, you're probably aware that we've been doing some things there, and we work with each community to kind of decide together what would make the most sense that we can do things together. Things that we can complement, existing city programs, things that we can bring in. And I just say, Steve, I just say that it's been great working with your staff. I mean, we've had great reports, and I wanted to share that sort of collaborative efforts on these. You're probably aware of some of the things we've done in Taft with improving the access to fishing and kayaking. I don't know if you've noticed the paddle station where you can rent kayaks, check those in and out. This summer, and I don't know if we actually have I don't know if we have our zip line and the planetarium there yet, but you'll be I think the first park that we'll be doing that in. We bought a portable zip line and a portable planetarium for our recreation and education that we'll be bringing to different parks. I guess we're inspired by the Super Bowl. It's not that zip line, but it's something that is pretty exciting for the kids, and a planetarium. Fitness trails. One unique one I was going to mention is the Airports Commission owns the Crystal Airport. So we're developing that in a joint development. There's a large undeveloped area with wetlands, and so we're restoring that area. And the first project we did was restore the boardwalk that was underwater a good part of the year. So we'll be using that for education, environmental education programs too. Regional trails that we're known for, and you're probably aware that we finally finished the 9 Mile Creek Trail. Actually, it was great. We got the Richfield portion done earlier in collaboration with a sewer replacement. We're very opportunistic when we do trails, so to the extent that we can try to piggyback in and do things. Now it's complete through Edina. We'll have the grand opening. I hope you can come. It's Sunday, June 3rd, I believe, is the Sunday, so we'll have the appropriate gala for that. It's already been used pretty heavily. People couldn't wait to do that. It's beautiful boardwalks through, and it really is kind of the finishing touch of this whole part of the region on our trail network. And you're well aware of the different trails it connects to. And incidentally, the one that we opened right before that was our Nokomis Minnesota River Regional Trail, which runs on the east border of the city. And then we'll be with the city obtaining the money for the Cedar underpass. We'll be running a trail through there at the same time when that's under construction. We do trail partnerships that you're also, it's kind of fun to talk to Richfield because a lot of the things have happened, you know, in this area. Our on-ramp connections that we call is an effort to try to improve the connections between the local trail networks and the regional trail networks. So we're less of an interstate that just kind of passes through communities, and we actually do better connections. So one of the 5 projects we did in the past couple years was the Nokomis Minnesota River Trail connection that's along 70th. That was part of our joint effort with the city. We also do things like bike fleets. We bring bicycles into areas to teach safety, so we'll do that at schools. In Richfield, we actually did it at the Open Streets, the PennFest program, which we get kids, good practice habits and things like that. The last thing I wanted to talk about was our community engagement. I mentioned that we've really stepped up our efforts in that area, and it really was a realization by our board that traditionally we've served more people in the exurban and farther out areas, and it's because that's where all of our parks were. And so that's where we built our nature centers. And over the last 4, 5, 6 years, we've really made a major effort to try to serve first-tier communities, and that means the Richfields and the Hopkins and the Robbinsdales and the Brooklyn centers that are first-tier from the center cities in order to provide better access by not just, we're obviously not going to buy 100-acre tracts and build new regional parks in developed areas, but by trying to form partnerships with all those communities in that area so that we can use existing facilities or improve on those facilities in the communities so that we can bring our programs into those areas. For both primarily seniors and kids is our primary focus. One of the couple examples, one is we call our Parks on the Go, and that's a van that we, here are just some of the few things in kind of the Richfield area that we've done. We go to over 200 community functions every year, and those are some of the things, everything from city functions to even some health fairs and things like that. We also do what I think is one of our biggest successes is explorer camps, and what that is, it's a week-long camp, but rather than kids having to come to our facilities at our nature centers, is we bring the camps into the communities, and it's you can see just a couple examples here. One was a senior camp, actually, that we held in Hopkins, and we held and are holding every year, which we basically seniors go to camp for a week. Another example of one of the youth camps we did was at Pamela Park, and you can see some of the activities that we get kids involved in. We have about 24 certified teachers on our staff, so we do a lot of education with. We develop curriculum working with the school district, and that was the last area I was going to mention, was that our partnerships that we're doing are not just with municipalities, but with school districts and nonprofits and libraries. Actually, there's kind of a cool program where kids will, say, read a book about butterflies, and then they'll go out and tag butterflies at our nature centers. So it's sort of connecting that educational connection. A couple examples that we have done, probably one primary example is the Hopkins School District is not really near any of our nature centers, but we have a Lowry Nature Center in Carver Park, which is a premier nature center. So we've married those two programs so that our educators come into the Hopkins schools, kids go on field trips out to our different nature centers. And I wanted to just close by mentioning that we do a lot of nonprofit partnerships, and just as a couple examples, we have special camps for kids on the autism spectrum that we learn a lot. The nonprofits that specialize in that learn a lot by our different programs. There's a weekend ride. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's for similar kids with similar challenges. It's a horse. They learn how to care for horses and ride. Highly supervised, obviously. They were always located at the county homeschool. I used to call it the boys' school. I'm showing my age here now. But the county decided they wanted to repurpose that area, And so we offered them our stables that happened to be empty at the time out at Baker Park, and so they're operating out of that facility now. And then one that I think is really kind of cool, it's Operation No Limits is for at-risk youth. So it's everything from youth that have been either incarcerated and serving different service commitments to referrals from the court system to try to get them more engaged in the outdoors, which is a big part of our mission, is to try to reconnect, well, everyone to nature, because there's all sorts of great books and studies that say that's something that the trend has been away from that, and so we see that as a big part of our mission. And I'll just close by saying I cannot remember which mayor I was talking to that told me this, so I won't give anybody credit. But we were talking about one of these partnerships and the programs we're doing, and they said, this is the way government's supposed to work. And I couldn't agree more. That's exactly the thing we believe strongly in on our board and our staff, is that we should be working together. And we think we've had some pretty great successes with Richfield, and we're always looking for new ideas. So please don't hesitate to say, what about this? Or, have we thought about this? It's something we've done somewhere else that you think might be applicable. So let me stop there and, in the interest of time, and answer any questions you might have.
Councilmember Garcia.
Well, Representative Gandu, I want to thank you for, you really have invested in Richfield and all the communities that you serve. But, oftentimes when you do something for Richfield, we take credit for it.
That's okay.
So, but you really have invested a lot in our community and geared a lot of your programs, to address our youth, and we appreciate that. The other thing that we appreciate, too, is the fact that since you were elected, one of the things that we look forward to is that you communicate with us. We hear from you through emails, and, that's very important, because that way, you keep that partnership ongoing. And it's always great to know what other partners are doing and what we can take advantage of. And you let us know that, and you work well with our community services director. So we appreciate that, and we thank you.
It's very kind of you to say. I can say without exception, our entire board feels very strongly about that, about being accessible, and we view ourselves as elected officials of an agency that no one really knows about, so we view that as we need to do a little greater effort to make sure that people know who we are and that we're responsive.
I probably shouldn't bring this up, John, but I feel I need to just to evidence the ties and the special bond, at least I feel we have with Three Rivers and yourself. I don't know if you recall, first time I met you, you were running for District 4. And prior Mayor Gattell and you and myself were at a fundraiser.
Yes.
And the quickest way I've decided now to get somebody to yes is sit next to him with your foot in a bowl, having a foot massage, waiting for the pedicure. I guarantee you can't say no, and it's carried through. But I really appreciate everything you've done for Richfield and the continued interest in Richfield, because it's evidenced by the trails and everything. And you're being here and always in the neighborhood around at public events. So sincerely appreciate all the efforts of you and everyone else at Three Rivers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for not asking me to go to a foot pedicure again.
First time's the hardest.
Yeah.
Comments? Thanks again, I really appreciate it.
Thanks again for having us.
Councilmember Reagan Gonzalez, you have the pleasure and honor of presentation of the 2017 Food Safety Award.
Yes, I will ask our chair and our vice chairs to come up, please, for the Advisory Board of Health, or will it be our staff? Will you guys? Okay. Chris Close and Taylor Crescent to come up and do the presentation for the 2017 Food Safety Award. This is something that we've been doing for a few years now. And Chris and Taylor will explain it a little bit more, but it's a way to highlight those businesses in Richfield that are doing excellent job with their food handling and food safety.
Yes, thank you. So the Advisory Board of Health since 2006 has been working on the Food Safety Awards, and we couldn't do it without our wonderful health inspector. And so basically there's two different categories. And the category is for a full service restaurant and then for a limited service restaurant. And this could include fast food, a cafe, or pizza carryout. And so basically what happens is the health inspector nominates 2 to 3 restaurants for each category, and these are based on food safety interviews, and then also on inspection results. And so she gives the nominations then to the Advisory Board of Health, and the Advisory Board of Health then chooses the winners. So we have 2 winners tonight. And so the first winner is for a full-service restaurant, and we are pleased to present the award to Cadao Express. It's located at 6637 Penn Avenue South, and the owner is here, Michael Mai. Michael, will you come up, please? And then our second winner is for fast food and limited service, and this goes to Taco Bell, located at 7740 2nd Avenue South, and the general manager, Vera Sanchez, will receive the award. Vera? So thank you, and again, we are proud to present these awards, and we're glad that these restaurants are at the top of they're the cream of the cream, so let's put it that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I just want to say thank you to Chris and Taylor for all of the amazing work that they're doing in leading the Advisory Board of Health. The Advisory Board of Health looks at issues like what we just saw today, all the way to the impacts of health in housing, and inform the decisions that we make on City Council, and also do an excellent job of reaching out to the community and getting people involved. So thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Councilmember. Third item on the presentation is the receipt of the City of Richfield Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2017. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm Caroline Stutzman. I'm the manager involved in the City of Richfield's audit. So I'd like to take a few minutes of your time and go through the results of that audit. We do have a PowerPoint that I believe is going to get pulled up here for you, but as that's getting pulled up.
Excuse me, can you move the microphone up a little bit?
Absolutely,
there
thank
you
you.
go. Thank you.
Appreciate that. The main reason that you ask us to work with you is to provide an opinion on the financial statements. That opinion is housed within the independent auditor's report. Within that independent auditor's report, both management's responsibility as well as our responsibility is outlined. And management's responsibility is for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. What that's getting at is we aren't allowed to determine the numbers that we audit. That has to be done in-house by management, and then our job is to provide an opinion on those. The opinion that we are providing is what's called an unmodified opinion. That is the highest level that you can receive and not a change from what you would have received in prior years. And what that means is we believe the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects as of December 31st, 2017. In addition to just looking at the numbers as we go throughout our process, we also conducted our audit in accordance with government auditing standards. That requires us to consider internal controls as we go throughout that process. We did not have any internal control related type items to report. In addition, because of the federal funding that the city receives, we also conducted what's called a single audit of the Section 8 housing federal program. There were no findings in relation to that individual audit as well. And one final component of the audit is what's referred to as Minnesota legal compliance. The Office of the State Auditor puts together 7 checklists full of state statutes that they ask us to ask a number of questions about. We went through all of that process and no findings related to that either. So after all of that, we'll dig into the actual numbers and financial results for the year. This chart shows us the general fund revenues, expenditures, and total fund balance. Total revenues increased about 3%, expenditures 1.4%. After combining that activity with net transfers in, the result was a modest increase in fund balance, pretty break-even year, increasing about 52,000 for the year, and ending at just over or about 8.7 million. That 8.7 million represents 40% of the general fund expenditures based on the 2017 spending levels. That's a reasonable balance to have, considering that balance needs to get you through this time of the year when you receive your property tax settlements. An additional way to look at that fund balance is in accordance or in relation to your fund balance policy, which indicates that you would have a minimum of 40% of the current year revenues. And based on this year's calculation, you're at 41%. So that is, you are in compliance with that policy as well. This slide is a snapshot of the budget to actual information for the general fund. In the first column, we have the final budget that was approved, which was a plan of 0 change in fund balance. And then that second column are the ending results that we touched on, showing the increase of about 52,000 in fund balance, and the variances for revenues and expenditures. Revenues were under budget by less than 0.5%. So that's about as close as you can get, considering the size of budget that you have. That's outstanding. Expenditures were under budget as well by 2.7%. This chart shows us tax capacity, the levy, and the impact on those two components and the tax capacity rate. As the tax capacity increased at a greater rate than the levy, the tax capacity rate actually decreased and ended the year at 56.8%. We then shift gears and look at your enterprise funds, starting with the liquor fund. Both sales and cost of sales for the liquor fund increased by 8.5%. The reason for that is really the Sunday sales, as well as the fact that in 2016, there was an 8-week closure and remodel of the Cedar store. So you have all of that activity happening now in 2017. Operating expenses increased about 3%, so pretty regular there. The impact of that activity was that the gross profit percentage remained consistent with the prior year for your city at 25.1%, and it's also consistent with other neighboring cities' municipal liquor stores, as well as the metro average. The water and sewer fund is on this chart. Charges for services increased with an increase in both the water and the sewer rates. And then operating expenses were really consistent, only changing by 0.2%. The gray bar is the operating income. So the fund ended the year with operating income of $215,000, so fully covering depreciation expense, which is a good thing to see, that the charges for services are covering that. That is an item that indicates you're setting dollars aside for future replacement of capital assets. So it's good to see that that gray bar is above the line. Similar story when we look at the storm sewer fund, also fully covering depreciation. Happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you for the great report. I don't know that I have any questions, but I just want to take a moment and thank you and really thank our staff, because a clean bill of health for us is a clean bill of health for you guys, and just a reflection not just on your responsibility but your integrity. It's a deep dive, and so if any of my colleagues had questions, want to entertain those, but I just wanted to say a hearty thank you all around, and great work, especially to our staff and especially to Chris Regis.
Anybody else?
I just want to say thank you also to our staff, for the city manager and our financial director, for the amazing work and management they do. We have a very tight budget, and we operate and provide excellent services here in Richfield, and it's because of the leadership that you guys have given us over the years to help us be in this good financial condition. So thank you so much for that work.
Thank you, Ms. Stutzman. I just want to echo that in the sense that I don't want to ever say when you come in or your peers come in and present this that it's routine, but we've come to expect it, and it's not necessarily because of anything we do. It's, like they said, the staff does all the heavy lifting. All we do is approve it. So thank you for corroborating what we've always thought, and that's a well-run city.
Thank you, and I would absolutely echo that. The entire finance team is ready for us always, and it's a great process to go through. We appreciate all the work that goes into it because we are a disruption in daily life, and we know that, so we try to, make it as seamless as possible. So we appreciate the work that happens before we get there.
Well, great. Thank you
All right,
again.
Thank you for your time.
If there are no more comments, I would move that we accept the comprehensive annual financial report of the city for the year that ended in December 31, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The comprehensive annual financial report is accepted. Next item is council discussion, hats off to hometown hits. Councilmember Garcia.
Mr. Mayor, Veterans Day is coming up, and the Assumption Church will be celebrating.
Memorial Day.
Oh, Memorial Day. Sorry, thank you. Memorial Day will be coming up, and Assumption Church will be celebrating the 75 military veterans that are in their cemetery. And these veterans are World War II and Korean veterans, and they will be celebrating with a mass starting at 9 o'clock, and then Boy Scout Troop 374 will release 75 balloons. There will be an honor guard and taps, so it's a very nice tribute to for Memorial Day. So please join Assumption Church. That's May the 27th. And then on June the 2nd through the 16th, the Bloomington Police Department, and I know this is putting a plug for the Bloomington Police, but but the fact is they have a big book sale. It's called Book'em Book Sale, and it'll be at Southtown right next to Herberger's, and it starts at 11 o'clock, June the 2nd, and the reason I mention it is such a well-organized book sale by authors and by topics and what have you, and if you're a reader the way I am, it's really a great deal. So please take advantage, and the proceeds, of course, go back into the community and into children's programs. Excuse me. And then June the 7th at Augsburg Park is the beginning, which is a Thursday, is the beginning of the music celebrations there. And that starts at 7 o'clock. And the first band that will be the Richfield Symphonic Band. So please join us for that. It's great. You have to bring your own chairs, sit around and visit with your neighbors, and it's just a lot of fun. Also on June the 7th at 6 o'clock to 6:45, there will be a yoga instructor there who's certified, and it'll be a lot of fun. It's a free yoga in the park exercise that we should take advantage of. And finally, on Tuesday, June the 12th at noon at Augsburg Park, this is something for your kids. It's a Minnesota Zoomobile will be at Augsburg Park, and that's a lot of fun. I mean, the kids really love that, so take advantage of that. And that's about it, Mayor.
A little short this evening.
I know.
Councilman-
I get criticized one way or the other.
No, you don't. No, we just call attention to the fact that you're the leader in terms of hats off, so we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Troutman.
My list is shorter and got shorter, so I'll be brief. I will just highlight the memorial service at the Veterans Park Memorial. Just for folks that haven't actually ever been to the memorial, it's a great memorial. It's a treasure. We honor our veterans in Richfield, and especially on Monday, our veterans that have given their life. I remember my cousin Garrison Avery, who's a West Point graduate, who died in his first tour in Iraq, and it's an important holiday, and we do it well. We do it right. This Monday at 2 o'clock, if you can join us, that'd be great. On a lighter note, the Richfield pool is opening up on June 8th, and season passes are there for families. It's great for moms and dads that are home with kids and are wondering, what am I going to do all summer? It's fantastic. It's a great way to just spend time with your family. The Troutmans are going to be out there a lot this summer, and so go on our website. And if it's a financial hardship, I believe we have some programs. You can find that on our website too. So we want everybody to have fun and splash around in the pool this summer.
Thank you. Just a reminder in regards to the Memorial Day festivities that started too over at Veterans Park. It's going to be in honor of Charlie Turner, who was a Richfield resident who was one of the early casualties in the Iraq War, and his brothers are going to be here talking a little bit about Mr. Turner and the family, and giving due credit to all the names that are memorialized on the tablets and everybody that served in the military. So if you get a chance, it's supposed to be a beautiful day, please come out and honor the veterans. Second item is, yesterday I was invited to Village Shores at 66 in Lindale to cut the ribbon for a grand opening on the renovations that took place over there. A developer and the owner of the facility puts $22 million into the project to expand its beds and to prepare for a full complement of services and for senior citizens from 55 and older to assisted living, and they added, I believe, 30-some beds for memory challenged. So it's the same place, same facility. They've added some amenities that are outstanding. I got a tour, and they have a full gym now with rehabilitation counselors and everybody down there that can assist in getting everybody into a get well or a fitness program. It includes vocational rehabilitation that a lot of senior citizens have to go through after release from a hospital for any length of stay. So they're trying to cover all the bases, and it's what I remarked to most of them is the rooms, there's just a ton of light. They're open, they're spacious. There's no sense of being in what used to be an institutional type living. It's welcoming. I met a lot of the residents are really happy to be there. And the one thing that we have to keep in mind up here is we have a serious focus on maintaining naturally occurring and affordable housing in the city of Richfield. And we've got to remember that there's a lot of demographics we serve in keeping that in mind. And one of the demographics that maybe doesn't get quite the attention because for practical matters, they're not able to be out and about. They're not able to show up at city council meetings and advocate for the needs they've got. So we got to remember that the senior citizens is a rapidly expanding population, and we need to pay attention to their needs and make sure we're providing affordable housing for them as well as any other member of our community that's looking for it. So it's just a hint that there's more than one demographic we have to serve, and I think everybody up here appreciates that. So, Councilmember Howard.
I just have one update tonight, and the mayor kind of keyed on it. I just wanted to comment on the work session we had yesterday about our strategies on naturally occurring affordable housing. And, I think all of us believe that everyone in our city should have access to quality, affordable, dependable housing, and that's a big challenge. And I just, for folks that have interest in that issue, the presentation that was given to staff and to the council is going to be on our website. And we looked at a host of strategies and really looked at setting some goals to continue work that's been happening for a year now to preserve and expand the access to quality, affordable housing in the community. And I particularly want to thank our renters of Richfield. They showed up in force and testified and brought some good feedback to the table. There's just a lot of work happening in the community and on the council, and I'm optimistic about some of the work that can move forward in the coming months.
Thank you. Councilmember Reagan Gonzalez.
On a related note to that, I wasn't able to attend the Advisory Board of Health meeting last night, but at the same time that we had our study session, the Advisory Board of Health had a presentation from Bloomington Public Health on the impact and connection between health and housing. And that's quite an extensive report that really talks about the demographics of Richfield and the different types of impact on our community members' health, so individual health all the way to community health. And so the Advisory Board of Health, I guess, is interested in focusing on advancing that work, which is really a need that we have. The policies that we're looking at and the changes we're looking at the council level are really about protecting and maintaining and improving affordable housing here. But then there's also just issues and barriers that community members face. So it's really exciting to hear that the Advisory Board of Health is going to be working on that. And I don't know and did anybody mention Unity in the Community? No. Okay. Unity in the Community is coming up, so that's this Thursday from 5 to 7:30 at Veterans Park. And basically, it's an opportunity to meet your neighbors, and it's an encouragement to the community to go out, meet new folks in the community, bring your kids. There's going to be free food, snacks, entertainment, games. Our public works and public safety departments will be there with their vehicles, and we'll have a canine demonstration. So that's this Thursday in Veterans Park from 5 to 7:30. And we heard this earlier today, but just as a reminder, we have the 9 Mile Creek Regional Trail grand opening on Sunday, June 3rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Again, there's going to be fun activities. It's free. You can take your family. There'll be picnic food there and snacks for folks. And I know we've brought this up in the past, but I just want to remind people that we have our entertainment in the park in Augsburg Park on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. So after you go to yoga, you can go walk over and go listen to some great live music. And then there is also live children's shows on Tuesdays at noon. So there's a lot of activity happening in the community of Richfield that's free and accessible for everybody.
Thank you. I would move the approval of the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Consent calendar, City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. The consent calendar, for those here and those at home watching, contain a number of separate items which are acted upon by the City Council in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved, the individual items and the recommended actions will also have been approved and require no further action by the Council. Tonight we start with item A, consideration of the approval of an annual request for a temporary on-sale intoxicating liquor license for the Academy of Holy Angels, located at 6600 Nicollet Avenue South, for their Holy Angels Rock the Lawn event taking place on Friday, June 22nd, 2018. Next, we have item B, consideration of the approval of a resolution authorizing the city to affirm the monetary limits on statutory municipal tort liability. And finally, item C, consideration of the adoption of a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into agreements related to the Minnesota Department of Transportation's Landscape Partnership Program. And that concludes tonight's consent calendar.
Do I have a motion?
I move the consent calendar.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Consent calendar is passed. Next item on the agenda is consideration of the approval of a resolution amending the comprehensive plan designation. Executive summary. Over the past 18 months, the city has been engaging the community to update the comprehensive plan. As part of this update, a small area plan for the 66th Street and Nicollet Avenue area was prepared. Given its proximity to the intersection and the fact that it had been vacant for many years, the property at 101 66th Street East was included in the small area study. A market study identifying the types of uses for that area could support was prepared as part of this work. That study indicated that larger format retail, prominent in the Hub Shopping Center, was unlikely to regain prominence due to the migration of this type of retail to freeway corridors. The study also confirmed the strength of the Richfield housing market, indicating that there was an opportunity to build some additional higher-income multifamily units in this area. A small amount of additional office space was also indicated as a possibility for the area, specifically as a complement to the introduction of new residential buildings in a mixed-use development pattern. A variety of options for this hub area were presented to the community. Based on the market study and the input of the community, the site has been recommended for mixed-use development in the comprehensive plan update. Statutory review periods for the comprehensive plan as a whole mean that the update will not be adopted in final form for a number of months. PLH and Associates, the applicant, purchased the property at 101 66th Street East in August 2016. The property consists of the former Southview Baptist Church building and 2 single-family homes that were owned by the church, all of which have been vacant since 2013. At work sessions on August 23, 2016 and November 20, 2017, the applicant presented concept plans to the City Council and Planning Commission for a mixed-use building on the property. Based on feedback received at these meetings, the applicant has submitted a proposal for a 3-story mixed-use building, including 31 residential units and approximately 6,000 square feet of commercial space. The applicant has applied for an amendment to the comprehensive plan that would change the designation of the property to mixed use. This application for a change to a single parcel could be approved more quickly by the Metropolitan Council than the entire comprehensive plan update. Policies in the comprehensive plan that support this amendment include the following. Expand the vision of the lakes at Lindale and 66th Street area to include the hub and Nicollet shops. Promote development that broadens the tax base. Encourage and support the development of strong commercial districts that respect the values and standards of the citizens of Richfield. Encourage the development of viable and responsive neighborhood commercial services. The proposal is also consistent with historical development patterns along 66th Street East. The attached map depicts the non-single-family residential properties along this main thoroughfare. A public hearing for this application was held at the Planning Commission meeting on April 23rd. A number of neighbors spoke against the proposed amendment and project. The Planning Commission opted to vote on the amendment and table further consideration of the specific development. The Commission voted 7-0 to recommend approval of the amending the comprehensive plan designation of the property to mixed use. Staff, anything to add?
Sure. I do just want to remind the council that approval of a comprehensive plan amendment, this particular comprehensive plan amendment, does not obligate you to approve the specific development proposal that will likely come before you sometime next month. So these two issues are separate. They have to be considered in this order, but approving this one doesn't mean you have to approve the other.
And it's my recollection that that was discussed or at least brought up and put forth at the Planning Commission also, that this was one part of the process, and didn't predicate or mandate any affirmative votes down the road one way or the other, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Council comments?
Well,
We can wait, but I know that I had some discussions and exchanged emails with one of the neighbors that indicated they would like to either designate a spokesperson to have someone come up and offer some information from the neighbors. Ms. Lipinski, I believe, was designated to be the spokesperson, so please step up, and I'm not going to be dogmatic on this, but 5 minutes more or less, please.
Sure.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to address the council this evening. And I would just like to address the topic. As you said, it divides into 3 parts, the decisions as it relates to this property. But what I'd like to address tonight is the question that's before you: should it be amended, the comprehensive plan be amended to be mixed use or not? And so I would like to tell you our residential neighborhood's position is that an amendment to designate this property as mixed use in the comprehensive plan should be denied. And I'll give you a little bit of some of the key reasons for our position. You really fully highlighted this report, and I'm going to mention a few things in there as I talk this evening. This report was really thorough and prepared for the City Council as a briefing for this topic tonight. And as you said, it highlights some of the reasons for the amendment approval, and also the market study of the hub, which is very interesting and I think will provide great information when that time comes to redevelop the hub. One thing that I didn't see in the plan, though, was any reference to a study of this particular area. You know, this residential neighborhood is offset from the hub. It isn't the hub. And that's one of the reasons that we would like to see studies completed to determine impacts of a mixed-use designation in a residential neighborhood and the traffic safety considerations of such a large development within a single-family residential area. There's a solid technical impact analysis is needed to understand the implications of mixed-use development at this site, especially in conjunction with the 66th Street redesign. Anyone who lives in that area kind of knows what traffic challenges we've had in the past, and we're just envisioning that the good improvements that are happening with the 66th Street project and the roundabout emptying out to the west end of this property may present some new and different traffic flows that might need to be studied in order to understand how a three-level multi-use facility would interact with that traffic pattern. There is a couple statements in the comprehensive plan that I'd like to highlight because we really agree with them. One of them says that building scale and character should be sensitive to the surrounding context of the built environment. We would all agree with that. I think that's a really good statement. Another plan element states that the scale of new development should be sensitive to the scale of existing development and provide transitions in scale where appropriate. I can't think of anywhere that's more appropriate to be sensitive to scale than within a residential neighborhood. And the residential neighborhood is not a part of the hub. So the scale of the development we were presented in April does not offer that kind of transition. So I think that, we feel that moving right into a residential neighborhood, considering those scale statements in the plan, we're in complete agreement, and that's what we'd like to see there. We asked for this amendment to be denied so that appropriate zoning for this property can be considered thoughtfully, with input from residents and without the pressure of any imminent deadlines for the comprehensive planning process. The question has also come up as to whether a multi-use amendment in the comprehensive plan for this property would constitute spot zoning, since the property sits within a single-family neighborhood and is 80% surrounded by single-family homes, and that's a question that we need to have answered. The one other question we have is what type of mixed-use development is being proposed. In the comprehensive plan, it talks about MUN, MUC, and MUR, and so we were wondering, because they all have different conditions for use in those designations, which one is this? And also knowing that there's a planned unit development component that could come up later for consideration, that is kind of interacts a little differently with zoning, how might that impact conditions of use for this property? Those who did attend the comprehensive plan open house, one of the other statements in the report was that residents were included in the comprehensive planning, and I think a lot of residents did come. I think it said 100 residents from around the city came to the open houses. But as it happens, only a couple of people from this neighborhood came, and when they came last August, the display showed multifamily housing. It didn't say mixed use, and we didn't get a lot of answers to the questions posed at that time regarding the plan direction. And so I don't need to outline for you, because you've already heard, if you've heard the Planning Commission minutes, that most residents became aware of this in April. So they became aware of the developer's proposal, and they also became aware of the rezoning proposal. So a few people had heard of it, were wondering about it, didn't get answers, but the rest of the people were completely surprised. As a result of that surprise, they rejected at the Planning Commission meeting their approval of this project in terms of what they felt about it, and they didn't want the mixed-use amendment either. And I think the lack of residential input on this unique parcel in the comprehensive plan, and it is a unique parcel because it's one of the few parcels in that whole plan that's being proposed to be turned into something kind of different than it was in the past. I don't think that lack of input's been intentional. There were open houses. There were a lot of things for people to go to. It's just that nobody in this particular neighborhood knew that something significant in their neighborhood was being talked about in those meetings, or that they should be there. And it was not brought to them till recently. So we do think that input could still happen, and there could be a significant contribution to the overall success of any plan for this site. We want what is best for Richfield, and we know you do too. We can see by the work that you do in the City Council that wonderful things have happened in Richfield. We understand there's also room for improvement and redevelopment at this site, but would like to do whatever we can to make sure that's compatible with the adjacent residential zoning code, that states that traffic should be minimized within residential areas and that residential locations be safe, attractive, and quiet. We would like some neighborhood representatives to be included in this dialogue. We live here 24/7, 365, and care what happens here. We, again, want to thank those of you who have come to the neighborhood and you've really given some thought to this process. Please deny the amendment tonight so that traffic safety, aesthetics, and residential compatibility considerations for the neighborhood can be explored and collaborative solutions can be achieved. On behalf of the neighborhood residents, we thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments and your concerns, and you were spot on in terms of timing, so thank you. I'm going to read the recommended action because there's no reason hiding it. The action recommended by staff is to approve a resolution amending the comprehensive plan designation of 101 66th Street East from quasi-public and low-density residential to mixed use. We're provided with some, and I think you've got the handout, so I'm going to just go through some of the historical context that was provided to us in the staff report. As part of the comprehensive plan update process, the Nicollet Avenue and 66th Street area was studied in further detail, including a market study and concept plans. The draft plan guides the area as mixed use, including this site. A map of the draft plan for this area is attached. The comprehensive plan update process began in late 2016 and has included numerous open house events and other opportunities for public engagement. On May 8, 2018, the City Council voted to send the draft plan to surrounding jurisdictions for comment as required by the Metropolitan Council. This site, formerly 3 separate parcels, has been vacant and for sale since 2013. In terms of the historical context, what that says, well, I'm not going to presume that you didn't understand that, but the commission that was appointed by the City Council has been working on the comprehensive plan for 2 years. And like you said, the lack of participation to a certain extent from your neighbors and the people on Stevens and First Avenue has historically been a bane on the City Council and the staff trying to get the information out so you knew that there may be an impact or some changes coming in your neighborhood. It doesn't do you any good for me to say I recall a similar situation for 2 blocks on Xerxes that 4 or 5 years ago, and this was somewhat at the direction of the Met Council, if I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa, but there was an indication that we needed to rezone certain neighborhoods of all residential homes to a higher density, I think apartments is what they were calling for. And, you know, when the neighbors over there got word of it, needless to say, there was a large amount of concern about somebody coming in and buying 1 house or buying 2 houses and then leverage the entire neighborhood and building apartment buildings and totally wiping out the private residences. And like I said, it's no consolation for you that it did get rezoned, but nothing has happened. In this particular case, I had, I think, a conversation with you, Ms. Lipinski, saying this is the first reading. All it does is it moves it to the next process. And one of the reasons that it's here tonight is, and I think Ms. Peelman had indicated that approval of the proposed comprehensive plan amendment does not obligate the City Council to approve the applicant's development plans. That, to me, is extremely important because I heard a lot of people say at the Planning Commission when I was here that it's not necessarily the change to mixed use. It's the plan that hadn't been vetted and you didn't have information to really understand what the Lynch team was proposing. So after 18 months, the comp plan, based on interviews, public meetings, talking to people at bus stops, talking to people throughout the community, because when we appointed people to that commission, they had to be not salespersons for the commission. They needed to be salespeople for getting input and information from the citizens on what that comp plan should look like. Rightly or wrongly, that comp plan determined that mixed use was appropriate for those particular 5 lots or 4 lots on the corner of Stevens and First Avenue. That's what more likely than not is going to go forward to the City Council. So what we're doing now, tonight, if this passes, is ratifying the work of your peers and your neighbors and citizens in Richfield that put this comp plan together. And so I feel obligated to number one, ratify the decision that was made by the commission to put the comp plan together, changing that. But number two, much as was talked about at the Planning Commission and carries through tonight going forward, we're not obligated to do anything for Mr. Lynch in the future. What he's obligated to do is put his sales hat on and sit down with you people and try to make that project, if it's possible, to make it most acceptable to you and make the changes that I heard people talking about that night at the Planning Commission. So I intend to move the passage of the change in the designation. I can only speak for myself, and the other council members may have other things to say. But what I'm doing is ratifying the hard work of the people on that commission that chose or made the determination that mixed use was appropriate for those lots. So, comments?
I would like to just second what the mayor is saying. Thank you for speaking, and thank you for being very articulate in the points that you and the community have expressed. I just want to tell you that I am also in agreement with the comments that you had made about the building scale and the character and the fit of the building and the proposal with the community. And as is, I am not in support of that specific proposal because I do not think that it fits at all with the community. And as the mayor said, there is a lot of work to be done, and that is not the issue before us tonight. And when we were looking at this, if we have to say, do we think mixed use is the best fit for this space? The property went up for sale mid-comp plan, and it was an opportunity for us. It was included in a study, right? There was the small area plan, so there has been a study with that lot included.
That's correct. This site was included in the small area plan of the 66 in Nicollet area.
Okay, so there was the study conducted to see if this was a good fit. And if I say no to mixed use, I also have to say, what do I think is a better use for that? Do I think single family homes is a better use? Do I think keeping it as is a better use? And I do not think that changing the designation to something else is a better use. I do agree with the mixed use. And something to remember is that the mixed use designation is mixed use designation of the area. So not necessarily within that site. It's not restricted to that site, but it is with that whole area that was included in the plan. So I just want to second what the mayor is saying and clarify with the community that it is extremely important that we continue to work with you and the developer to make sure that that specific proposal is a much better fit and neighbor to our community and to the residents.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Well, I saw the Planning Commission meeting. I attended the 2 open houses, and I visited with the neighbors. And I will say one thing. When they asked me if I thought, if I would like to live in a neighborhood like that, and immediately I said no. Because I want to live in a neighborhood that's just got neighbors. But the harsh reality is that, it's all has to do with our tax base, and I agree with what has been said by the mayor and council member Reagan Gonzalez. But I will say one thing, that the neighborhood has got legitimate concerns, and they have legitimate concerns about the challenges that this development brings. When I think about, 6,000 square feet of commercial space and 30 units of apartments in those 3 lots, that's a tight squeeze. It really is. When you look at sure, there's going to be underground parking for 30 automobiles, but most people that rent or have a house, they've got more than one vehicle, sometimes up to 3 or 4. Depends how many drivers live in your apartment. And then when you think about the commercial space, when you think about that, at one point, restaurant was designated, and then the developer said, no, we don't have to have a restaurant. Well, we want to make sure that when he says that's really going to happen. You know, we want to make sure that whatever commitment is made to the neighborhood at an open house meeting, that's a follow through, because a restaurant will bring a lot of more folks to frequent a restaurant. So you're going to have and other people that will frequent the businesses. Now, can you designate 2 spaces per business? I don't think so. And what's going to wind up happening, and we've seen it like at Lakes Buffet, you're going to wind up parking on our neighborhood streets. And that's not what we ought to be doing. It's just not right. It's not compatible to the character of our neighborhood. You know, and then you think about the green space. You know, how much green space is allotted? Not very much. Not very much at all. And who wants to live with concrete or blacktop? I don't. I mean, it's ugly. But the other thing that, you know, I don't know where, you know, I don't really know the kind of work the applicant does, because there's really, from what I understand, there's really no development around here that he's initiated or developed. So it's hard to tell. And I don't know what his financial situation is. You know, is there stability in that this development, once it gets started, is going to succeed? Because it's going to take, I think, a lot of money to make sure that it's a viable development. And is he going to be asking for tax increment financing? That's another question. I know that staff has really has always guided whatever developer approaches them about a potential site or a potential development. And I want to commend staff, because I think they've really gone out of their way to try to work with everyone. They know that you know, our aim is to enhance our tax base. But I also want the applicant to know that this is you're going to have to leap tall buildings, you know, because right now you have to be extremely clear. You know, once the neighborhood makes some suggestions, or staff makes some suggestions, I think the applicant has got to make sure that he listens, and that he's very clear in, you know, yes, I understand this, and yes, this is what I'm willing to do. I think he's been too vague, and he says, well, yeah, we can think about that, or we might do this, or we might do that. We need some very clear answers, and we need to really take to heart, you know, that our neighbors, you know, I mean, these are our taxpayers. They're the ones that this community belongs to us. And we want to take pride in it. And we want to develop something that's meaningful, something that's going to give back to the community, and something that's going to be an investment for all of us taxpayers, because we all want to pay less taxes. So, and I'm glad that Melissa brought up the fact that, you know, that by voting for this doesn't in any way obligate us into saying that we're going to okay the proposal if and when it comes before us. So let's try to work together, and I will look forward to working with staff, the developer, and the neighborhood, and hopefully we can sit around the table and we can really do a little more give and take, and we can be more open and more receptive to actually hearing and trying to implement changes that are going to make this development, if this does go through, a good development. And if it does not go through, then we're going to look for something that does fit that area. And I look forward to that, and that's that's our obligation as we deal with issues like this. So that's about it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Howard.
I just, a few comments. First, I just kind of want to get us to, before us is the approval of mixed use, and I do want to thank the neighborhood for coming tonight and for their particular comments. I want to thank Mr. Lynch, the developer, for being here tonight as well. Before us, whether we should designate the site mixed use or not, you know, when we look at our overall comp plan in the direction of our city, that requires us to have a vision for the kind of city we want, long term. And I think what that means is quality, affordable homes, a vibrant community, great schools, great parks, you know, multimodal quality transportation, you know, amenities that make families and residents love the community that they serve and they live in. And that is really this large overall approach when we look at the comp plan. And so what does that require? I think it requires us to take a look at the full city, take a look at the whole picture. It requires that we listen to the community. It requires that we're fiscally responsible stewards when we look at the kinds of development proposals and opportunities across the city. And it requires that we take a look forward. And we're not going to have the perfect vision to you know, look ahead into the future, but we have to study as we have with the study here and make educated guesses and look with an eye to the future. And so when I look at this site and I look at the study for the hub in particular, I do think that this site makes sense for mixed use based on the community feedback, based on the reconstruction on 66th Street and what we see across the entire corridor in terms of opportunities to develop. There are very few opportunities in our entire city where there are potential for development, a potential to welcome new Richfield residents to our community, which is an important opportunity. And so this site, to me, long-term, mixed use is the one that is most realistic and reasonable and forward-looking. Now, again, as folks have stated, that the specific development, in a sense, is separate from that discussion tonight. But I do want to thank the neighborhood, as well as other council members have spent time talking with the neighbors in the neighborhood at community meetings, at multiple open houses. And I also want to thank Mr. Lynch. I do think that there's a sincere willingness to work with the neighborhood. At our last open house that lasted several hours, a lot of feedback was taken at that meeting, and I still believe that there's an opportunity to continue that work together as a city, as a community, as neighborhoods, and with Mr. Lynch. And so that's a discussion for another day, in a sense, and that work is important to continue. But to the question before us today, should we designate the site mixed use? When we're looking at the long-term vision for Richfield, I think it's a clear answer, and the answer is yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. In addition to what everybody else has said, it's something that always makes me deeply happy when I see Richfield residents come together and organize and make their voice heard, even if I don't necessarily agree with them. It's great. It's what makes our community a great place to live. I know change is hard, and I want to bring just maybe a little hope and a little perspective as somebody that grew up on a busy street in Richfield. That I don't know if we have studies that go back as far as they did, but we had more than 90 cars per hour during rush hour on our street. It was a great street. It was a great community. I've heard a lot of comments saying this will destroy our community. There's no community if there are 90 cars that go by in an hour. And I want to say that there is, and it's still a home, even if you have more neighbors. And that's not to say that this particular development is a done deal. But in terms of the long-term vision for the community. I think mixed use is a good use of that space.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, just very short, I forgot. I want to make sure that the residents know we're in this together, and there's a lot of challenges that we have as a community. So we are a small community here in Richfield, and we have very little space for redevelopment. We need to be looking at how we're going to balance the property taxes on our homeowners. And I wanted to just talk about a couple things that the city staff have been doing. In May, we got a memo that was talking about 3 things that the community development department are doing to be more proactive in community outreach and working with our residents and developers. So they have already instituted this. They are expanding the mailed notice area for certain public hearings from 350 feet radius to a 500-foot radius, and requiring developers to install temporary signage on development sites, providing their contact information and date of their public hearing, and requiring developers and to hold a neighborhood meeting. So these are changes that were recently made, and I just want to make sure that you all know that these are things that we are doing because we are in this together, and we have to address these challenges as a community.
Mayor Elliott, I appreciate Councilmember Gonzalez mentioning that, and I want to echo that and say that the pain of not understanding what's going on, and whoever was responsible, that's a pain that we feel up here too, and I want to triply appreciate and thank everybody for communicating that lack of communication, because that's one of the differences, one of the changes that you see in our policy, and one of the ways that our city's been made better through this process is that we have better tools now because of this process. So thank you for mentioning that.
Thank you all for your comments. At this time, then, I would move to approve a resolution amending the comprehensive plan designation of 101 66th Street East from quasi-public and low-density residential to mixed use.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Councilmember Garcia's.
Thank you, Mayor. These little cough drops really help. This is a public hearing in consideration of the approval of a new on-sale wine and 3.2% malt liquor license for Los Sanchez Taqueria, which is located at 2 West 66th Street. On March the 13th, the city received an application for the on-sale wine and 3.2% malt liquor license for Los Sanchez Taqueria, doing business as Los Sanchez Taqueria, located at 2 West 66th Street. Before it did business as Rosa's Kitchen, and now this is they're operating under a new name. All the required information and documentation have been received and reviewed, and all the licensing fees have been paid. The public safety has conducted an investigation, and they find no reason for us to deny this application. And like I said before, this is a public hearing, so if anyone wants to speak to this issue, please come forward. Anyone wants to speak to the issue of liquor license for on-sale wine and 3.2% malt liquor license for Los Sanchez? Anyone?
Can I just say Los Sanchez is great, and they have a fantastic torta.
It's my new favorite Mexican restaurant in Richfield.
I will say one thing. I hate to criticize another council member, especially in public, but quite frankly, we have these study sessions or whatever, and Councilmember Troutman always brings in food. And the other day he brought in the avocado and chips, and and he proceeded to just It doesn't take him long to eat. and today he brought in, what did you bring, sushi?
Sushi from Lake Winds.
And
From
he
Lake
doesn't
Winds.
share with anybody
That-
ever.
Not true.
And so, I mean, I would think that, it would be courteous, and I think the rest of the council would agree with me if he would bring a little extra to share. But having said that,
Next time I'll bring him a bib because he's got that coat on because he dribbled a little bit.
True. There are no secrets in chambers.
Hate to do that.
I'm not going to pile on, Councilmember Troutman.
no, well, anyway. So I move that we close the public hearing.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is closed.
And I move that we approve the issuance of a new on-sale wine and 3.2% malt liquor license for Los Sanchez Taqueria.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Thank
Good.
you. Councilmember Reagan Gonzalez, sorry.
The next item on the council agenda is a consideration of the approval of the first reading of an ordinance amending the tobacco ordinance to include increasing the minimum legal age to purchase tobacco products and tobacco-related devices from 18 to 21 years of age, and updating several sections to include the new and updated definitions. Tobacco 21, a movement aimed at raising the minimum legal age for tobacco and nicotine sales ages to 21, has seen recent success in Minnesota and nationwide. A work session occurred on March 27th, 2018, with the Advisory Board of Health related to increasing the tobacco sales age from 18 to 21 years. The presentation highlighted the benefits of Tobacco 21 policy and the protections it provides for younger tobacco users. In addition to raising the legal age to purchase tobacco products from 18 to 21 and adopting findings to support the change, the proposed ordinance updates and incorporates new definitions in order to stay compliant with state law and current with new products on the market. The proposed ordinance also eliminates purchase, use, and possession penalties against underage individuals, as studies indicate that such penalties are not effective in preventing tobacco use by young people. So I just want to reiterate, this is not an ordinance that will be an opportunity to criminalize our youth. This is really about sales to children in our community and not about putting a mark on our youth's record and really damaging their future. That is not going to happen. And with this policy. To date, 7 communities in Minnesota have passed Tobacco 21 laws. The communities are Edina, St. Louis Park, Bloomington, Plymouth, North Mankato, and most recently Shoreview and Falcon Heights, and I believe Minneapolis as well. I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Thank you. The proposed language here is really just designed to increase the sales age from 18 to 21, protecting the youth in our community from ever starting. And as the staff report said, there have been a couple of new definitions added. And so throughout the ordinance, those new definitions were included. But the bulk of this is the increase in age.
Do we move to discussion or? Yeah? Okay.
Well,
Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. I think I mentioned in our work session that the only reason we get to this place is because we were in some ways popular. We were more popular than other people, and it's not fun to have an unpopular opinion. And while I think I would support the Tobacco 21 in general, I would offer a friendly amendment to consider cleaving from the age limit the vaping and the vaping community. And I've looked at a lot of studies, and I thank you for all the residents. And I just want to say to anybody here and anybody that's watching this, we've received a lot of mail in the last week, and I haven't had a chance to respond to everybody. But it seems like there's a difference between vaping, which is vapor and not smoke. It's not smoking, and in the community. I think as I've kind of watched this over the years and watched this, I'll confess my bias. I'm not a vapor, but I have a brother who is and has been a part of that. He quit smoking because of using vaping as a tool. And as I've gotten to know people at vaping shops, they really are a cessationist community. There are a lot of people that join that. There's a lot that with the purpose, with the intention of not smoking, and they give each other mutual support in that. And it's a great community, and the people that that would be harmed by it are not big tobacco, but they're small business owners and small communities. And in other cities, there's been, and I've not found that to be the case here in Richfield, but there's been a sense that we don't want those kinds of people and those kinds of stores here in our communities, and anything like that just comes across sideways to me. So I would support the ban, but I would offer the amendment that that vaping would be distinguished from cigarettes and other tobacco products.
I'm going to second Councilmember Troutman's friendly amendment for a couple reasons. He'd indicated that we received an enormous amount of literature on both sides, and I don't know if it was equal, but we got a lot of good information. I'm not a vapor. I used to be a smoker. I don't smoke anymore, but what I saw in regards to the pros and cons in regards to vaping is I saw medical reports and I saw statistics. Against it, I saw anecdotal stuff. And I'm not real fond of anecdotal representations that 25% of this or 30% of that vaping isn't a causal factor in quitting smoking or anything else. So a lot of anecdotes, but no really medical support that I could see. So that's the reason that I seconded Councilmember Troutman. So I think we need to take a vote on that first if there's no other comment.
I'd speak against the amendment. I think in a way that the conversation is confusing the issue, in that the Tobacco 21 to me is about access to tobacco products, and to me what's most persuasive about this is it's about access to tobacco products to folks under the age of 18. And I think the overwhelming study does show that if folks engage in tobacco use very early, then it's more likely that they'll carry that addiction far later. And there's plenty of study that does show that moving this from 18 to 21 is going to reduce the access to our 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And I think that vaping absolutely should be included as moving from 18 to 21. Sort of the discussion about what might be the differences between vaping and cigarettes, to me that's a discussion that isn't necessarily about the access to tobacco for youth, which is what's before us. And so I would speak against the amendment.
I would also like to speak up against the amendment. As Councilmember Howard said, this is about access to nicotine products, and any device that delivers nicotine, which includes vaping products, should be included in this, because this is not an issue about using vaping as a cessation tool. My father actually was close to a lifelong smoker, started very young, and used vaping as a way to stop smoking, and he's not smoked for 4 years now. And this is also not about stigmatizing smokers or stigmatizing the vaping community. It is about access for our youth to nicotine and starting smoking and starting using tobacco, or nicotine, excuse me.
Okay, the friendly amendment has been motioned and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Aye, no.
Friendly amendment loses. I do want to indicate, because something Councilmember Howard said, it leads to my major objection. I had discussions after our work session about why I don't like status ordinances that remove a certain segment of the population that's of age can join the Army, can get married, can sign a contract, can have a credit card. And we're saying, number one, one of the leading arguments is cognitively they're not fully formed yet. Well, then why are they allowed to vote? Why are they allowed to sign a contract? Why are they allowed to join the Army and be given a rifle if they're not going to be fully developed until 24, 25? To me, 18 to 21 is an artificial removal of that segment of the population from a legal product that they're entitled to buy. And I just heard Councilmember Howard is to protect the 15 and 16-year-olds. I have a real hard time, and actually, if anybody knows Marshall Tannick, wrote an op-ed in the Star Tribune 3 days ago saying it may well be unconstitutional. How do you justify having a product that's legal that you can tell a certain segment of the population they can't buy it? How do you justify that under the Constitution? And so I'm going to vote for it, but I've got serious concerns about what path we're going on saying you're either cognitive unable to make the decisions, or we're worried about the people that are following you, so we're not going to let you do something. That's not how this country is supposed to work. So I'm going to vote for it because I think it's a serious consideration that we need to pay attention to. I don't like the way we're doing it. So that's my spiel.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I just, I don't really think we need to debate all of this, but I just want to say the legislature just failed to pass a bill regarding not using cell phones when you're driving. We have gun control legislation that people really want, need, and are hungry for. So you can argue both ways all day long, but anything that saves lives or that promotes good health or that keeps us from having to pay the bill for somebody who abuses their health and then we wind up picking the tab for it, it's just not acceptable.
I think I'd just add, probably not too much, but I think this is a measure that will bring health. It will save lives. I'm not persuaded on the vaping component, but I'll support the amendment or the change to the ordinance, and I do want to thank everybody for coming out here. It does make a difference, and appreciate your engagement.
There's just a couple things. So there's been a lot of discussion already, so I'm not going to rehash any points that were said already. I do want to remind folks, tobacco continues to be the #1 cause of preventable death and disease today, and in Minnesota, and we're seeing this in Richfield as well, the number of 9th and 11th graders that are now using e-cigarettes and vaping is over twice the rate of regular cigarettes. So this is a real issue, and again, I am voting in support of this because this is about keeping nicotine out of the hands of our children, and there is millions of dollars that is going into creating new nicotine delivery devices all the time and targeting our youth to start very young. And this is an effort that we can do, and states across the country have taken this effort forward, and so have cities across the country to step in and support our youth. And lastly, I want to just say thank you to, I know there's a lot of different groups here today. There's been so many discussions and support from our Richfield youth. There's folks here from our from the high school's student government. There's folks from Partnership Academy, La Red Latina de Educación Temprana, the Tibetan Nurses Association. There's Richfield parents, physicians, health nurses, public health nurses, professionals, and community members. Answer, Clearway, American Cancer Society, and several others who are here, and the majority of them are here from the community of Richfield. So thank you for coming.
Been motion?
And I would like to make the motion to approve the first reading of an ordinance amending the tobacco ordinance to include increasing the minimum legal age to purchase tobacco products and tobacco-related devices from 18 to 21, and schedule the second reading of the ordinance on June 12th, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you for coming. Next item on the agenda is Councilmember Howard.
Yes, all right. I have consideration of the approval of an ordinance amending sign regulations and a resolution authorizing summary publication of the said ordinance. Over the past few months, staff has been researching potential modifications to sign regulations. This study effort began due to requests from the community for the limited use of portable signs and for greater flexibility in the design and illumination of freestanding signs on Penn Avenue. The goal of this ordinance amendment is to address those issues by providing some flexibility while simultaneously strengthening regulations related to the height, size, and quantity of signs. So I'm going to talk a little bit about portable signs. Current regulations prohibit the use of any portable signs, and staff annually receive a small number of complaints regarding this policy. A blanket policy prohibiting all portable signs has been perceived by businesses and community organizations as being too rigid. This blanket policy is also frequently ignored, creating a heavy workload for code enforcement. A side effect of prohibiting all portable signs is that businesses have instead opted to display an unlimited number of small yard signs. The current ordinance does not explicitly define small yard signs as portable signs and does not include any restriction on the quantity. So to remedy this, to remedy those related issues, staff is proposing amending the ordinance to allow limited use of portable signs with restrictions on quantity, size, placement, and hours of display as follows. A frame, sandwich board signs, T-frame signs, and small yard signs shall be the only portable signs allowed. 1 portable sign permitted per business with a maximum of 2 per lot. Large shopping centers would be allowed a higher number based on street frontage. Limited to 4 feet in height and 6 square feet in area. Portable signs shall not be displayed between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Existing regulations will continue to apply, and signs must be located on private property, not permitted in the right-of-way. Signs must be located on the premises to which they refer. Off-site signage is prohibited, and signs with wheels and or attached to vehicles or trailers remain prohibited. Freestanding banner signs, including flag or sail type signs, also continue to be prohibited. Temporary banners are only permitted when attached to a structure. I got a ways to go. I'm going to talk a little about the Penn Avenue design guidelines. The additional sign regulations apply in the Penn Central area, and that's prohibiting internally lit box signs on building walls and freestanding signs. Staff has interpreted this prohibition to include dynamic displays, that's electronic changeable message boards that you might recognize. These regulations have made nearly all freestanding signs on Penn Avenue non-conforming in some way and have been perceived as being too great of a departure from regulations affecting the rest of the city. The Penn Avenue design guidelines acknowledge that size and quantity of signs can be a visual blight, but do not propose any specific change to regulations. Staff proposes amending the ordinance to allow dynamic display signs and to reallow internally lit freestanding signs on Penn Avenue, with new restrictions on the height and size of freestanding signs. Freestanding signs include a dynamic display or internal illumination will be limited to 100 square feet in area in the Penn Central area. Freestanding signs greater than 100 square feet in area would be permitted on larger properties but would remain ineligible for a dynamic display or internal illumination. I'm going to talk a little bit about reducing freestanding sign height and the size citywide. Based on staff's research of peer cities' sign ordinances, a review of many existing signs in the community, and policymaker feedback from our work session on April 10th, staff is proposing to introduce new restrictions on sign height, size, and quantity that would apply citywide. The maximum sign height for many commercial properties would be reduced from 27 to 20 feet. The maximum area per sign surface would be reduced from the current 200 square feet to a sliding scale based on the acreage of the site, and the cumulative area of all freestanding signs in the site would be reduced as well. Under the current ordinance, there is no specific limit on the number of tall signs per site. Staff proposes amending the ordinance to allow just one exceeding 8 feet in height per site. Exceptions of these new regulations would apply to a planned unit development over 2 acres in area. So that would be like a large shopping center such as Lindale Station, and properties abutting highways, for example, car dealerships. Please refer to the chart in the policy section below for further details. There's a few other changes to the sign regulations. The community development director shall have the authority to suspend permit fees and time limits on temporary banner signs during major road construction projects. This would make permanent what was permitted through an interim ordinance for 66th Street construction, which has since expired. We're going to clarify regulations for fixed temporary ground signs, typically displayed during the development, construction, sale, or leasing of commercial property. We're going to clarify sign setback regulations. The current ordinance states that freestanding signs shall be set back 5 feet from lot lines. Staff proposes to add a clause further clarifying that no freestanding sign shall be located within 14 feet of the curb line for situations where property lines and right-of-way vary, such as when sidewalks are located on private property with an easement. There shall be a minimum distance of 100 feet between any internal illuminated or dynamic display freestanding signs and any residential property. Signs located on a wall that face an abutting residential property line and within 100 feet of said residential property line shall not be illuminated between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Freestanding signs greater than 6 feet in height will be required to provide landscaping around the sign base. Generally speaking, the proposed changes better reflect the quantity and dimension of many existing signs throughout the community and will primarily serve to prevent the addition of new oversized signage in the future. Benefits of limiting the quantity, size, and height of freestanding signs include minimizing visual clutter and distraction to motorists, improving the pedestrian experience by bringing signs closer to a human scale, limiting freeway scale signage to appropriate locations, and protecting and improving the overall appearance of the community. In other words, we're updating our sign policy.
You did tell other council members there's a test to follow, right?
Yeah, multiple choice.
No, specific.
Okay, there we go. Right. A reading comprehension test. Yeah, I need that. Okay, I'm going to make the motion to approve an ordinance amending sign regulations and approve a resolution authorizing summary publication of said ordinance.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance passes. Next item is Edwina. I'm sorry, Councilmember Garcia. I got personal.
That's okay, Mayor.
But not quite as personal as the Forest Lake mayor to his.
Okay, moving right along. You know, as per usual, anytime we make an appointment to one of our commissions, you know, we always like to brag and just because we're so, you know, we're so proud that we've had so many citizens, so many residents that have come forth to serve on our city commissions. And so, and the only reason we have a vacancy this time in community services is because one of the commissioners that was serving there up and moved away from Richfield. So that gives us an opportunity to invite someone else to the table, and that person is Ronald Macklin. So he will be contacted by either the chair of the commission or Jim or Tofsedhofer. So we look forward to working with him, and that's it. So I move that we approve his appointment to the Community Services Commission.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
He is appointed. Congratulations, Mr. Macklin. Next item on the agenda is a summary review of the city manager's annual performance evaluation for 2017, as required by Minnesota Statutes 13D.05, Subdivision 3A. Everything is guided by something. And at my request, City Manager Devich has provided me with 2017 most significant accomplishments, and that is in an 18-point font and underlined and emphasized. But in with all due respect to Mr. Devich, we had an amazing year. in a good market and everything, but you know, some of the highlights that came from outside is the second year in a row, the hottest market. City Page has had us as the most desirable suburb. And, you know, once again, and we joke about it up here, and Mr. Devich is fond of telling us that we're the policymakers, but the nuts and bolts, the actual operation of the city happens internally. The city manager, the supervisors of the various departments, the staff, the workers, they are the ones that make us shine. But it has to start from somewhere, and it starts from the top. And just, I'm not going to go through them all, but some of the things that are relevant to both the operation of the city and the fact that the city is on the upswing so obviously and so persuasively. We had 25 staff sent to a 2-day multi-city diversity and inclusion workshop. If you've been around Richfield for a while, you know that early in mid-'70s we suffered a significant decline in staffing, and we're operating at a low level, but very, very very professionally. So to dedicate 2 days and 25 staff members to go to that type of training puts a burden on the rest of the staff, because if somebody's gone, you got to pick up their work. But no moaning, no complaining, because it was important to the city that they get this diversity inclusion workshop and training. We got an additional $4.5 million from Hennepin County for the 77th Street underpass. A lot of that had to do with the lobbying, the friendships, the persuasive ability of Mr. Devich to tell people we've been waiting long enough, it's time to fund it. Community development, you look around, it's happening around you. That comes from the city, comes from the staff, and it comes from a significant change internally, where through the guidance of Mr. Devich and everything, the staff members, the people that are dealing with the public, have always been highly competent, dedicated to their jobs and everything. But sometimes when your focus is on the job and making sure that everything is done correctly and right, you lose some of the personal touch. And there's been some movement afoot over the last couple of years that has created significant ability of staff to not only hold to hard guidelines, but at the same time have a personal relationship with the people they're working with, and the developers are coming into town to understand that we want to do everything we can to make this work. There's going to be rules, but we'll work with you, and we're going to turn out the best product available. And so that, I think that's huge, because developers and everything, when they're looking for places to build or thing like that, the last thing they need is pushback or a sense that the city is putting more roadblocks in front of them than are necessary. So the process is difficult, and perhaps maybe one of the best examples I can point out is we've got a already famous resident of Richfield that opened Local Roots, and you know, 2-3 weeks into operation has accolades from Rick Nelson of the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, who, and I had breakfast there last Sunday, and I mentioned to her that Rick was looking for her to move into the neighborhood, and she says, "No, I'm staying here for now. I may get there." But I talked to her about her dealings with the city, and she said the thing that's hardest for a startup, I had been marketing soups online and through the local, I think Kowalski's was one of the purveyors of it, and you thought that that's how you ran a business. But when I started working on opening local Roots, you understand it's horribly complex, and there's a lot of things that need to be done in a lot of different departments. And she said, I'm not going to say it was easy, but I will say that I was never led astray by staff. I was told who I had to talk to and what had to be done. So up front, they let you know there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things. And she says it was harder than I expected, but once you're open and running, you got a support team behind you, and that being the staff of the city if you have questions and moving forward. And so that creates that ambiance that we want projected to everybody that's going to come here and do the same thing, start up, and know that it may be difficult and there's a lot of hoops, but we'll work with you to make sure it gets done right. And once again, that comes from the top, comes from the supervisors, feed off what the city manager tells them we need to do and how it should be done. So that just permeates the entire staff. And that's why, once again, and not to give away secrets from behind closed doors, but the raise that we gave to the city manager this year was well deserved. I would have liked to have been able to give him more, but he keeps refusing, so I just keep it in my pocket. So, thank you, Steve. I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot over the 10 or 12 years I've been on the city council. I don't know that I would ever want to do it, but I've learned how a city should be run, and I appreciate the lessons that I've learned from you. So, thanks again. And I don't think we need to move anything, do we, Harry? Okay. And I didn't even get past the first 2 paragraphs on the most significant accomplishment. I can just roll this over to next year and someone else can read it, okay? All right. City manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. First of all, I'd like to thank you. You're a great City Council to work for. You're very supportive of our staff. You know the challenges that we have, and you do appreciate those challenges. And the one thing about Richfield that makes us as an organization work is that unlike some cities, this is a city where the City Council and the staff are in tune to each other and work together. There's no bickering and fighting back and forth. That's not to say that that you don't look at the policy considerations and make sure that we're following them, but that is to say that we have an understanding back and forth, and we're both the City Council and city staff trying to get to the same point and make Richfield better. And to that end, I think we're along that path. So again, thank you for the opportunity to work for you. The only other thing I want to add is I just want to make sure that people in the community, I know we had about a 15-minute presentation from the Three Rivers Park District, but they really, really are very good about working with City of Richfield and putting together recreation amenities for the city. I would dare say most people don't even know that there is a Three Rivers Park District, but John Gunyu and John Gibbs, the 2 folks that represent us in that organization, they're always looking for ways to work with Richfield. And I think, like you said, we were on the front end of a lot of things that Three Rivers Park District has done, and it's really been a good relationship back and forth that really pays off for the city residents. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Claims and payroll.
Mr. Mayor, I will move claims and payroll.
I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Claims and payroll is passed. There being no further business, meeting adjourned.